second edition of the Idaho 97 podcast. We kind of dumped it the wrap cast because we were doing a wrap on the week in the legislative session. A lot of that comes from our Twitter feed. If you're not following our Twitter feed, you are missing out on stuff that's happening live in Idaho politics every week. But if you want a shortcut, just come to this podcast every week. I'm here, Nate Hoffman, a co-founder of Idaho 97 Project. I'm here with Emily Walton, fellow co-founder, Alicia Abbott, our North Idaho Democracy rep. Give us a wave, Alicia. And Mike Satz, our director in Boise, although I'm not sure what river that is, but looks like
Boise River.
Of course, it's the Boise River. We're going to just kick it off with a rundown of all the exciting things that happened in Idaho democracy this week. And I'm going to kick it to Alicia to start us off with the wide number of voter suppression bills that are actually getting stalled up in the Senate. So tell us about that a little bit, Alicia.
We talked about some of our voter suppression bills that have been on the table recently, and we have had some tools and outreach to our legislators to address those bad bills. So the House bills 439, that would change the unaffiliated voter deadline, and House bills 692 and 693, that would be Dorothy Moon's monster voter suppression bill, and Priscilla Giddings' ballot box bill have made it to where they are waiting for hearings. We understand because of Senate leadership has disclosed that he doesn't think that we're going to get through these bills in the Senate, and they're probably not going to go anywhere, according to Chuck Winder. But Mary Souza, Senator Mary Souza, who is also running for Idaho Secretary of State against Dorothy Moon, brought a set of her own voter suppression bills to the table in the Senate State Affairs this week. And after overwhelming public testimony against those, the committee voted to sit on those bills. So for all intents and purposes, those two bills are done for the year, and that is very good for Idaho voters.
And let's just toss in there real quick, right? That both Souza and Moon are running for Idaho Secretary of State, but don't we have another candidate to file this week for Idaho Secretary of State as well?
Yes, Phil Mcgrane is our third candidate in the Republican primary for Idaho Secretary of State.
And the only one who's okay with Idahoans actually voting.
Yes, he turned out testimony several times during this session in favor of voters not being suppressed, and he thought these bills went too far.
Yeah, and I'll add, Mcgrane has done a lot of work in Ada County to make sure that voting is accessible. So he really does care about that.
Yeah, I mean, that's the main job, right? I mean, Secretary of State has a bunch of functions with Idaho businesses and whatnot, but making sure that Idahoans are able to vote and that Idaho elections are fair and done in an orderly way and a legal way, that's their one job. And so the fact that we have two of the candidates representing far-right positions, which are, counter to Idahoans voting, says a lot about where we're at. Let's move next to something we talked about last week. Idaho House members from the far right really don't like librarians. What happened there, Mike?
Right. Yeah. House Bill 666, which I think you can accurately call the Idaho Librarian Criminalization Bill. It was a bill that basically would expose Idaho librarians to criminal charges if a parent were to decide that, there were some questionable materials in books. And of course, that's nuts, right? It's a parent's responsibility to decide what their child or what their family reads and that kind of thing. And, we had some very positive indication from, again, Senator Chuck, who said he thinks that bill is dead. He doesn't think that bill is going to make it out of the drawer this week. I think that was reported in the Idaho Statesman and some other sources. So that's good news, right? A lot of these bills that we see are really kind of these nanny state bills, and it's kind of ironic that these people who run around saying they're patriots and saying they're all about are really trying to restrict other people's freedoms. And here they're trying to restrict family freedom to choose books. So that was a very positive move by just saying this is family business. Let's leave that in the family.
Yeah, in a similar vein, the House was trying to regulate family decisions about youth who are trans. Emily, do you have any updates on that?
Yeah. So Bill HB 675, a really terrible bill, criminalizes people and families searching gender affirming medical care. In fact, I apologize, my cat Simba has joined the podcast. But one of the things it also had in there, this lifetime prison sentence for doing some of these things, just absolute overreach. Complete nanny state, takes away freedom for families to make the decisions they need to do. We were so disappointed, I have to say, when we saw that almost the entire House Republican caucus voted yes on this. The only one who didn't was Fred Wood down in Burley. A doctor, notably, did not vote yes on this. We were so disappointed to see that almost entire vote in favor of this bill. We immediately got down to the Senate to meet with the folks in the Senate to really try to make sure this bill does not advance there, and talk about how this is brought by extremists who are really trying to push Idaho into a very bad place. And so we're really hoping that bill stays there. And I know a lot of people reached out to us with concerns. A lot of people have reached out to do testimony and stories, and those things matter so much. And so let's keep working on it and keep that thing in a deep, dark drawer until session closes, probably somewhere end of March, crossing our fingers.
It is quite amazing how much news drops every week here. Up in the far north of Idaho, we had this recorded phone call, which is, shocking in and of itself, leaked to the media about a plot to take over the Democratic Party up there. Alicia, what was that about?
We're keeping it real up north. I tell you, I was not surprised, but I listened to this entire recording, guys. So I'm going to give you a lowdown on it real quick. So a gentleman named John Grimm, who formerly has run for sheriff in Kootenai County, recorded a phone call with a gentleman from the Kootenai County Republican Central Committee. He is the youth chair of the KCRCC, Dan Bell. And in this recording, John Grimm is being approached by Dan Bell to register Democrat and file to be one of the committee chairpersons for the Democratic Party, with the intention of doing a few things, notably to embezzle money from the Democratic Party was one of them, install a new chairperson for the Democratic Party in Kootenai County, and they wanted to install Dave Riley, who you might remember as the anti-Semitic school board candidate for the Post Falls that was defeated. And third, they wanted to stop and halt all Democrat meetings for a period of 2 years and continue to funnel those monies to conservative causes. And I've heard a lot of crazy things from the extreme right in the last 6 years, guys. My mind was blown when I listened to this 30-minute conversation. Hats off to Mr. John Grimm. I really appreciate this responsible conservative for recognizing that this was a, unethical way to approach politics and took action by exposing this. We need more folks to be doing this. And I'm going to let Mike talk a little bit about, what this means going forward. They were very implicit in this recording about what they were going to do to the Democratic Party in Kootenai County.
Yeah, and if you haven't heard the recording, I think the Coeur d'Alene Press broke the story. Shout out to the Coeur d'Alene Press, our local press. This is why we support local press. Go to their website, you can find it there and listen to it, right? And this is shocking, and I know that you say unethical, but I almost wonder, is it criminal? Right. And there's really just looking at two basic places. And you talk about embezzling funds, right? And I'm thinking more fraud, although, if they move funds, right, there could be other elements satisfied to reach as embezzlement. But, just simply being Republicans, going in and taking over the Democratic Party and then telling people donate to us and taking that money and giving it to the opposite party, right? That's actually fraud, right? That's actually an act of fraud, and I think that meets all the federal elements for the act of fraud. And it's interesting because there was a Republican operative that actually said, "Hey, there's no difference than Democrats shifting parties," and there's a huge difference, right? I mean, one is a protected First Amendment free speech and right to political association. And the other, what the Kootenai County Republican Central Committee folks did or are planning to do, is actually criminal. So there's just a giant difference between the two. And but what would make it actually criminal? Did it actually happen? Well, no, but we have these federal statutes against conspiracy, and conspiracy is basically planning a crime. And so I would really encourage our viewers and listeners to go listen to this tape and see if you hear these elements in there, right? But the elements of criminal conspiracy are: there's an agreement between at least two parties. It sounds like that's there. The agreement is meant to achieve an illegal goal, fraud. It sounds like that. All parties alleged to be involved to have knowledge of the conspiracy and participate in the conspiracy in some way. It sounds like that's there. I mean, even in the tape, you can hear them say, oh yeah, Brent Regan's on board with this. Well, he's the chair of the Kootenai County Republican Central Committee and the chair of the Idaho Freedom Foundation. So it sounds like there's been agreement and knowledge across the board with some groups of people here. And then the last thing is, at least one person involved in the conspiracy has to make an overt act in furtherance of the conspiracy. Well, on the tape, you can hear someone talking about trying to convince, I think, to vote, right? And the question is that even alone enough? It certainly shows that they're moving in this world, but I almost wonder, is that enough to show that the act of conspiracy has all the elements have already been satisfied in this one tape? I'm not sure about that last element, but it sure is close. So yeah, I mean, we've moved from just sort of political bullying to now kind of it's like crime, like organized crime almost. And who's going to do something about this? We have been consistently asking the state attorney general to investigate different things, and we get told, oh, that's not in our area. That's the local attorney has to do that, a local sheriff. Well, a local sheriff in Kootenai County is a constitutional sheriff that thinks he can enforce all the laws himself, and he gets to make up what the laws are and what they are and what's constitutional or not. So can't count on him. And the Kootenai County attorney is voted in and put in place by this committee. So this is really something that needs to be looked at either at the state level or at the federal level. And I'll tell you, I've been spending the weekend studying statutes, and we'll see what we can get with this.
Yeah, that's great, Mike. I hope we are able to pursue this legally, but even like politics and legal aside, just think about the mentality that it takes to come up with some kind of scheme like this. What thinking goes into rigging politics in that way? We're going to stay on the legal track for a minute here. There was a really interesting lawsuit that caught, I think, everybody by surprise on behalf of hair braiders in the state of Idaho, who are, were heavily regulated, actually. This resulted in a bill being introduced and quickly moved through the House. Mike, do you want to tell us what that was about?
Sure. And I'm going to start off by saying, we're a nonpartisan organization, and we look at positives and negatives of different parties. And I think every party has positives and negatives. But this lawsuit was filed by a foundation that is essentially a libertarian organization. And I'm going to these folks for what they did. It's focused on freedom. And what it's about is it's about the state of Idaho is one of only 5 states that has a statute in place that requires hair braiders, which really only impacts black hair care specialists, to have thousands and thousands of dollars and hundreds of hours of training. And it's an overtly racist law. The reason there's only 5 states that have it, it's been put in place years and years ago, is a barrier to economic advancement. And other states are more enlightened, and they have proactively removed that. Idaho has to get sued first before it tries to remove it. And so the House of Representatives said, oh, this is positive, right? Like, here we are, we've been screaming specifically about this body doing so much stuff. And here they are, they're doing something right. And we were just thrilled to see it going on. And then during the committee hearing, Representative Heather Scott from North Idaho basically says, yeah, I think this is great, though. We're always looking for employment opportunities for prisoners when they leave prison. And so they'll have a skill that they can use. I mean, what they're basically saying is all these prisoners are like, it's all black people in prison who are working on black hair. I'm a little jealous, but anyway. But then also she's making this horribly racist statement that is saying that this is a skill because we all know that people in the prisons are totally populated by black people, which is not the case in Idaho. And then you have Representative Hanks next to her going, smiling and laughing and giggling about it, saying, yeah, that's right. And it's just like, could you racist anymore, Idaho? And the answer is apparently no.
Or maybe yes.
Or maybe yes. Right. Let's not challenge him. Right.
We're going to keep moving here. This is another lawsuit that was filed this week by a founder of another group that's really doing its part to fight extremism in this state, Idaho Conservatives. Can you give us a quick summary of that, Mike?
Sure. It's not a lawsuit. It's actually a counterclaim, but that's essentially the same as a lawsuit. He was already sued. This is Greg Graff, founder of Idaho Conservatives, one of the founders of that. He was basically set up in kind of a sting operation. What it looks like is Chad Christensen's employer, and maybe Chad was involved in this. Representative Chad Christensen recorded him, saying libelous or slanderous things against Chad Christensen. So Chad Christensen, and so this countersuit is actually a countersuit that really opens this up. He's suing Greg Graff, is suing Chad Christensen, Dustin Hurst, and Greg Pruitt. Dustin Hurst of Idaho Freedom Foundation, Greg Pruitt of, I don't know, like 10 different organizations, including Idaho Second Amendment Foundation and some other foundations out there for his own claims in this regard. And it's exciting because it's going to move us into an area where now they're subject to discovery, and now we can actually put together the connections that they have. Like, we've known for a long time that their operations seem to be very coordinated, but now we're going to be able to find out. And this actually may put some heat on some of the board members of the Freedom Foundation, who are really the heads of the snake here, who are really causing this trouble. And so that was it's very exciting. If you want more news on that, go to ktvb.com and look at the 208. They did a report. Morgan Romero did a report on that, and you can get the background there.
Yeah. Something else interesting about that is it exposes the blogosphere in Idaho that has been put into place, has replaced the media in a lot of places, in a lot of rural places that don't have their own media outlets. And that's how this stuff was circulated. And we hope that the lawsuit here, if it should proceed, will expose some of that even more. We had our primary candidate filing deadline. Emily, I think you've been watching that.
Yeah, candidate filings for the primary in Idaho closed on Friday at 5:00. So we are looking that list over pretty carefully, understanding what the landscape's going to look like. We'll come back with some thoughts on that in the next few weeks on the podcast, but we'd really encourage you to go to the Idaho Secretary of State website, go to Elections Division, find it. It's on there. It's at the top. You'll be able to see it. Take a look. We'd love thoughts from listeners about what is out there, who's filed, who moved seats at the last minute, especially on some of those down ballot legislative races, things you're hearing in your community, what you know, that would be really exciting to hear. So we'll come back with some of that.
All right. Hey, that was super quick. That was our summary of all the stuff that happened this week. We are a action-oriented organization. However, the Idaho 97 Project aims to do something about all this news that is just flooding us every week. So part 2 of our podcast is some things that you all can do to protect democracy in the state. One thing that is ongoing is we have a primary election coming up May 17th. That is like almost a month away, just over a month away. Alicia, what options do folks have at this? Emily, did you want to jump in?
It's 2 months away.
March, April, May, 2 months. Thank you. That's why, we work as a team here. Alicia, what can folks still do if they haven't jumped into the primary process? What are their options at this point?
So Idaho 97 has been hard at work contacting unaffiliated voters, number one. Like we said earlier, House Bill 439 is hovering in the Senate. We don't think it's going anywhere. So we're confident that unaffiliated voters are going to maintain their rights to affiliate for a ballot on election day, up to election day. And so we're going to continue our outreach to those unaffiliated voters to make sure that they're plugged into a ballot with candidates. So if you want to assist getting the vote out to unaffiliated voters, you can volunteer. And you can do that by signing up for one of our phone banks. Sometimes they're text banks, sometimes they are social media outreach, but in general, that's where we sign up to take that action. Also, if you are an unaffiliated voter yourself, you should get plugged into a primary ballot with There are quite a few contested races in the GOP side of things. It's very important that we get Idaho Conservatives to the polling locations and into absentee ballots that have candidates on it. So you can do all of that on the Idaho Secretary of State's website, voteidaho.gov. And it's really easy. So you don't need much explanation. The tools are on the right side of the page. And that's it.
The
Yeah.
more Idaho votes, the better Idaho gets.
That's it.
So just to say that in a slightly different way, if you are not part of a political party, you still have options to affiliate with a party before election day, which you should do so that it goes smoothly when you go to vote. However, if you don't, you are able to switch at the polls as well. If you are affiliated with a party, you can't switch now, right? Am I saying that right?
The Republican primary is closed in our state, meaning that they have restrictions on who can vote in their primary. The cutoff date for the Republican primary is the 10th Friday before the election, which was March 11th. And so people who are members of other parties, like a Democrat, Libertarian, or Constitution, can no longer re-register as Republican and request a Republican ballot. So that's off the table for those folks. Unaffiliated voters are still good to go, as they've always been, and will hopefully continue to maintain their traditional voting rights.
Okay. Thank you. Mike, we still have some options. I mean, there's still bills moving through the House, but what can folks do about legislation that concerns us specifically on voter disenfranchisement?
Sure. So we have email actions still going to our representatives and senators. I think it's primarily senators now. Basically, it's one email. We have an email tool. You can go to our website. You can click on a link of actions, and you'll see an action for voter bills. And you can send it as a form email, but I actually encourage everyone to put a little personal note at the top, if you can, and it'll send it to your senators, just saying, hey, leave our voting rights alone. And those actions are still going on. Even though you hear people say, yeah, we think this bill is dead, until it's dead, it's not dead. And so we need to stay on this. Likewise, ACLU of Idaho has a voting action bill going, or a voter action bill for House Bill 675, which is the anti-trans bill. And you can go to their website to find that, or you can go to our social media. When we're done here, we'll re-up all these actions on our Twitter page, and we'll re-up them on our Facebook page, and you can find direct links to there, and you can do the same thing.
Yeah, thank you, Mike. The other thing you can do is donate to us, give us some financial support. We know so many of you have done this over the past, year, almost year and a half that we've been here. We appreciate it so much. And, those donations go so far to helping us bring your voice to the political atmosphere in Idaho, to the things that are happening here. And I do want to stress, this isn't just like Nate, Mike, Emily, and Alicia doing what we do. This is us listening to you, being funded by you, and then doing the things that you care about in a really concerted, strategic way. And your financial support really goes far to helping us do that. And we appreciate it. So please consider donating. Again, we really do need that support right now. And we're excited to see where we can take this organization with you behind us.
Yeah, I mean, you might say this podcast is brought to you by y'all, Idaho 97 supporters. And, who else brings you a segment, the third segment of our podcast that has been dubbed, thanks to our North Idaho rep, My Far Right Nut. Who is the nut of the week, Alicia?
Yeah. Yo, let's get stupid, y'all. Yo, homeboy, you seen him? See, fool. My nuts, man. Who you think? Forget it.
This week's installment of My Far Right Nut is being dedicated to Rep. Dorothy Moon, who we've mentioned already a couple of times and in our first episode. So we thought we would give her a little bit more attention since she's seeking it so much through all of this outrageous legislation she's trying to put through the legislature. So Dorothy Moon, she was born in Kansas City, Missouri. Peculiarly, I could not find her age anywhere, which I found interesting. She has a bachelor's of science in secondary education, comprehensive science, and a master's of science in resource planning from Missouri State University. She is the wife to Mr. Dar Moon, who is a national leader for the John Birch Society. She spent much of her career as an educator, retiring in 2012 from Chalice High School. John Birch Society is an organization that has been historically known for being an anti-Semitic group. They focus in dealing in conspiracy theories And in Idaho, they've been responsibility for spreading a lot of conspiracy theories in rural Idaho, where the Idaho Freedom Foundation doesn't have as much band. So everything from disinformation about fluoride, the pandemic, COVID-19 conspiracy theories, CRT in our classrooms, and things like you might have heard of like Agenda 21 are all conspiracy theories that are heavily promoted and spread by John Birch Society. So it's no surprise that Rep. Dorothy Moon, a sweetheart of both the IFF and the John Birch Society, is doing things like bringing disinformation into committee hearings, specifically like CRT. But in addition to being an educator, Dorothy Moon is the president of Moon and Associates and has been since 1994, and that is a land surveying company. She's also owner in a gold mining operation in central Idaho. So this kind of shows us a little bit why she takes so much interest in deregulated land use. So this is a little bit of insight on who Dorothy Moon is and who she's associated with. She's brought some really bad bills this session. She was sponsor of the voucher bill. She also brought her forms of voter suppression bills, which had to be rewritten several times. And notoriously, she was dishonest about CRT being taught in preschool classes in her district. Those educators were very upset and came out publicly to say, that's not true. And you haven't visited our school since 2019. So all in all, she's a harbinger of disinformation for dark money groups. And it shows through the type of legislation she's bringing forward. Mike, what are your takes on Dorothy?
Yeah, I mean, we have her labeled, her moniker with us is #dishonest dot. And it's because of her behavior, right? I mean, she's just being fundamentally dishonest, right? This whole CRT thing was unreal. And I mean, when people said, okay, show us the proof, we said, show us the proof. And we actually have a statement. There is no proof. Sorry, we don't have that. And so, I mean, this is bad news, right? And then here she is, she's like filed for a Secretary of State like she deserves it or something. And and she can't write a bill. Every time she's written these bills, and they keep sending them back because they're so poorly written. Even her extremist colleagues are sending them back because they're so poorly written. And the bills are about suppressing the vote. And she wants to be the Secretary of State. And that's just be a big no. That should just be a massive red flag to every Idahoan that values actual freedom instead of people like Dishonest Dot, where she runs around saying, I'm about freedom. And there's actually a picture out there now of her running with some patriot group up north, right? But she's not a patriot. She doesn't want you to vote. She shouldn't be our Secretary of State.
Thank you so much to all three of you. This has been a second episode of our brand new Idaho 97 podcast. You can follow us at the Idaho 97 anywhere online and check out our website at the idaho97.org. And we will see you next week with more great headlines, hopefully.
More stuff.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye, everyone.
Adios.
A wrap.